Go with your,
It's like playing
go with
pool.
your first reaction.
I'm like good at playing
Yeah.
pool after a couple. Some reason my eyesight gets much better now. Then when you have the third one.
Um, Well, look, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. Amy tells us we're back on live TV, so we will proceed to the afternoon session and start with the Chief Executive's report. So over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We continue improving and updating this report so we have a one-stop shop, particularly for the public forum, about what's going on right from central government through to sort of the local things that are happening that are important, but also project updates and timetables about what's happening across the district. So for the new council, this is a completely new information to try and get a one-stop shop of the collective information around what's going on a monthly basis kind of thing. So it covers, I'll make a statement about some of the key things, which I'll mention in a second, the reforms and the central government updates, and obviously, your electronic version, you can then access it, but it gives you an overview of the full range of legislation. It's either going through the House or it's being contemplated. The consultations the central government are doing that you may not be aware of, just so you've got a line of sight of some of those things, because there's a lot going in the background other than the being dominated often by the Three Waters reform or the reform agenda, but there's actually some quite crucial legislation that's going on in the background. Some of the things that are happening at a regional level, some of the partnership initiatives we have, policy, and so forth. So also including, and quite importantly, is an update on our finances where we're tracking, which is good news. So look, with that in mind, I'll just start with just some of the things I just want to highlight. I think the most exciting news we've had this month is the accreditation of the Dark Sky Society, and they're to be absolutely congratulated for their hard work and dedication and perseverance. I mean, the amount of work that had to be done to get that accreditation included an inventory of all types of lights in the district. You actually had to read them, had to get a special machine in to do that. We were pleased to help with a number of those things. We had to pass a plan change to actually anchor the lighting work. So we've been a partner, but the work, the hard work, and as I said, the Dark Sky Society deserve full credit for the effort and the work they've done. So it's probably one of the most exciting opportunities for the future. So the biggest issue the tourism sector has is winter. And so if we either extend the shoulders or include winter activity into the tourist offering for the district of Wairarapa, it's a game changer. So watch this space. By-election. So the by-election, she'll send you out a little link so you can have a look where the votes are landing. Special votes 14th, and we should have the results on around the 17th of February.
Sorry, Harry, to interrupt. Can you, who are the two people running for Greytown?
Sorry,
Community board?
I can't remember the
Neil
names.
Morrison and
Morrison, and the other's called Jeanette Wallace.
yeah, Jeanette. Yeah.
And Jeanette.
Wallace.
Yeah. A lot of media. In fact, you might have noticed. We're really trying to be very proactive in our media responses. And people remember, particularly one of the issues that we had was a lot of media stories are being written from the papers that were presented to council without actually then being updated, taking account the discussion that occurred. So we're really trying to be proactive about launching some of the stories, and you'll have seen the media release we put out around the Murray Standing Committee, around the Infrastructure Committee. So we're really trying to front foot and get ahead of the media where we can. I think one of the pleasing things from a staff perspective was the pickup on the story around bullying and some of the behaviour of the public. And, it's very real. We've just had that recent incident in one of our swimming pools, which is totally unacceptable. And the media response the Facebook response has just been amazing about supporting us, making it safe for the public, and where people's behaviour is unacceptable, just saying enough's enough. And so, it was really pleasing to see that kind of support for sometimes the difficult situations our staff do experience from abusive customers. And I'd just like to thank Martin. Martin also made it clear that from his perspective, if someone was being rude and abusive, that he would be prepared to talk to that person. So thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. That's appreciated by the staff. Obviously, our response in terms of the weather events and flooding and slips, into trying to get good information out to the community about the state of the roads, what was being done about them, those types of areas. So the comms team have been well and truly under the pump, but it's showing. It's really showing the quality of the engagement and the feedback we're getting from the community. Just finally, in my summary, the saga of the annual report continues. At this stage, it looks like we won't get the audit completed until March. So it means we'll be reporting that in April. Again, we've put information up on our website just to make it very clear to people that this is not a problem caused by council. This is, and we included the statement from the Auditor General, so the public could say it's not just council saying that. Here's what the Auditor General has said why this is not occurring. So moving on, I won't trawl through all the reforms in central government updates. Probably the most interesting is, particularly in the Three Waters, is it's going to be the question of the election.
Yep.
And you'll have noticed that National's signage has changed dramatically from we will repeal the Act to we will give local control. So there's a shift in all sorts of ways, and it'll also be interesting to see with Kieran McNulty now as the Minister of Local Government, where that goes. The obvious thing is that the 4 chief executives have been appointed and announced, and Colin Crampton has been appointed the CEO for Entity C, which is our entity, and I think we should, personally, I've congratulated him as a staff member, but it'd be nice for council to offer their congratulations to him if you choose to do. With that in mind, Tonya Haskell, who was many of you will have met, she is our relationship director with Wellington Water. So she's going to be the acting chief executive for Wellington Water, which means we'll get a change in personnel, and we're just making very, very sure that whoever the person we receive to be our relationship manager between us and Wellington Water understands small local government, because that's probably the biggest journey we've had. Is this is not one size fits all. The small district councils are very different to the metro, so we understand that, but it's taken a long time for that message to land. In fact, we had to have meetings with the chairman of the board and the chief executive to iron out just how, just to spell it out time and time again to make that happen.
Mary, sorry, can I just interrupt a couple of seconds in terms of the Three Waters, because it's quite clear that this new Prime Minister's got a little bit of different thinking along those lines than what the previous Prime Minister had. Is there any signal coming out of central government, for instance, about what they intend to do, or has nothing been made public at this stage?
No, nothing public. And the National Transition Unit has simply been told to just get on with it.
Okay.
So they're not signalling any change in policy, because the law has been made.
Yeah.
And the other bills are before the House now. So there's a difference between trying to change policy, but the problem is that the law has been set the way these things will work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But it's going to be an interesting space, a very interesting space.
Well, it has huge implications for the small council, because a big segment of our budget funding, of course, is on the Three Waters, and certainly with Wellington Water.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering what that's going to look like, and when we start thinking in July this year about 23-24 and what our budget's going to look like in terms of
Yeah, and we are required by law to not put in the three waters into our budgets. So you'll get a very clear view of what our residual budgets look like after the three waters have been effectively taken out of the LTP and the annual plan.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, so resource management, probably the key area is rather than the details of the bill itself and the rules and the various way the thing acts, is how it's going to be administered. And so the intention is to set up a regional group, a bit like the Regional Transport Committee, which would also, with combination with iwi, that they can then provide oversight in the development of some of the specific instruments that the Act requires. So one of them will be a regional spatial plan. So, we're in a good place because we've done a lot of work already on our spatial planning and where we're thinking we're going. But yeah, and then the other issue will be how the district plan meshes in to the process for forming a new unitary plan. So over time, there will be a requirement to have one plan that incorporates all the regional council planning instruments and all the district planning instruments to one plan. But effectively, all the signals are that the current district planning provisions and rules will simply just roll into they'll do a transitional regional plan.
The latest update we got on district plan was that it won't affect us because we're going to be one of the last councils.
Yeah.
Frank, so our district plan will probably see the full term of its life before we get involved.
I'm sure that.
So if that's the process moving forward, there is more of an appetite, I guess, to some extent for us to become a unitary authority across the Wairarapa, for instance, especially if all those plans are going to be incorporated, regional plans as well as district plans.
I don't know. You could think that, but I don't think it necessarily follows. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, the plan making will be regionalised.
Yeah.
But it still requires the local response. So things like resource consent processing, for instance, will still remain with us.
Yeah.
So and obviously you need to take the local story and plug it into the Uber machine, which is not different other than scale. The way we do it now with the combined three councils.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are at the bottom of the pecking order in terms of the amounts of that because we've got the district plan.
Yeah.
So perversely, we're well ahead of most other councils around the country.
Yeah. So I think we're well placed for how that will play out.
Yeah.
And the $1 million question is actually how that's going to be paid for. Because there'll be an Uber process to form the unitary plan. And we can't just expect the regional council to put their hands up and say it's all our bag to fund. Similarly, if there are appeals and so how it's actually going to be paid for, I think is going to be the $1 million question for us over time.
Just before we skip by resource management reforms altogether, nevertheless, the intention of some of the reforms are that councils do lose some of their current responsibilities in the consenting building area. Is that so?
No. So the consenting building area is governed by MB and the Building Act.
Right.
So that has nothing to do with the RMA reform. No, it's the Building Act that governs that.
Right.
Okay. But the intention is that there are, you hear David Parker speak, what he's hoping is that the volume of what they call discretionary consents diminishes. And most of our activity is actually in the discretionary resource consenting process. But I think he totally underestimates the amount of legal challenge that will occur on the framework in of itself.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but there's don't get me wrong. Part of the intention is things like, for instance, if you are a regional council, for instance, and you are, or in fact, if you're a local, like for us, if we're doing roadworks or improvements, we have to do sediment control. Okay, we apply for consent every time we do a site-specific sediment control plan for a piece of road. The intention is to replace that with standards. So if you say for this type of geology, here's standard A, for this kind of geology, it's standard B, and for this kind of environment standard C. So as long as you're showing you're complying with that, you don't have to do a discretionary consent to do sediment control, for instance. And that makes infinite sense. I'll move. There's plenty of stuff on the in there. If you have any questions about some of the national legislation things, just simply drop me an email. Just want to move on to some of the regional strategic updates because they're quite important. So there's some good information about some of the things the libraries are doing in terms of getting visiting authors, etc. But the positive engaging strategy. So there's a real opportunity. We're looking at the region hosting the senior regional games as an annual event held in Wellington, which is a really great way of highlighting the importance of fitness and health to our ageing population. And Nuku Ora, which is the National Sports Organization, Sports and Recreation, is working with Lisa, our Shared Services Coordinator, to see if we can bring this fun event to the Wairarapa for the first time. So we'll see, let's just watch that space, it's pretty cool. Also doing work with Age Concern around Aging with Attitude Expo in 2023, 17th of March. So a lot of good stuff really happening to promote the importance of our ageing community and lifestyles that go with it. Community development. The Pack the Bus. The big highlight there. We ended up helping over 900 families. You know, that is a really significant number, and that's an amazing community event. Not the least being the contribution that Craggy Range makes, the range of presents that they do, and putting that kind of commitment back to our community. The other exciting news is Heartland Services. So this is really an initiative by MSD to reach out to some of our remote and rural communities to provide support and information and access to government and non-government services. So it's not just MSD, it's trying to connect a range of other social services with our rural communities. So the request for a proposal will be released in 24th of January 2023 via the government electronic tendering system. So,
Harry, how do they work alongside our rural support trust at the moment, or are they separate to it?
I think it's early days right now. That's exactly what we'll be telling them is to plug in. They'll be reaching out to all of the kind of activities that, the rural support trust will remain separate in its own organisation.
Yeah.
And by the way, they've done exceptional work.
Oh, they're amazing.
Post floods, it's incredible. Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. It continues being a real highlight. It's been a very successful initiative for the district and the region. So the challenge continually is finding workers who match the roles available, which is pretty exciting. Usually it's the other way around. You've got lots of opportunities, but no workers. And unfortunately, we've been fortunate to be able to match a lot of work onto partnerships.
Sorry, just in Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, just the criteria changed to access that funding. I think at the beginning of this triennium, from memory.
Yeah.
So I assume that we're continuing along the pathway of applying for funding for that.
Yes, and we've
had approval.
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay,
we've got it. Yeah. And it's reported through our finances course.
Yep, excellent. Thank you.
But it's money in and money out, essentially.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
In the partnership space, probably the most significant is Rangatani Settlement Trust, going through the legislative process to really anchor that. That will have implications for us as a council to be part of particularly the governance structures around protecting the moana. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity for this council. And of course, with Leanne on board, you've got a good summary of what's happening. For those of you, if you actually read the legislation itself, it's actually legislation sometimes is not the easiest thing to read, but the section on the history of the grievance that the Crown is apologising for as part of the settlement is actually a really good read. it gives you a very good overview of the grievance and particularly the Crown apology. So, that's really exciting. Engagement and consultation. So obviously we're still master plan Featherston, the Featherston wastewater. We're working particularly on the representation review of the Māori Standing Committee because to get an understanding of the partnership framework. There was a paper a while ago. We've got to go back to the Standing Committee on that. Annual plan, revenue and financing policy, which is the rating review, which you'll be aware of. Control of dogs policy and bylaw, and Easter Sunday trading bylaw. So there's a few things that we're, if you any of those you just think, oh, I don't know about that one, just drop me a note and we'll make sure that you're up to date with that one. Now on the this next section, we're taking all the significant projects and we'll be reporting these regularly. So if someone asks you, where's the rating review up to? You've got the timetable for the rating review here and a traffic light that says where we're up to and so forth. So, the significant policies, so the representation review, the rating review, so that all the states that we put in, at the workshop, they're now in the public arena, so you can direct people to that if people ask. Our IT architecture, disaster recovery and security, and this is this is from an internal point of view, this is probably the biggest risk in terms of internal administration that we as an organisation face. So this is cyber security, the security of our information inside our systems, our backup, the way that we manage. If a disaster occurred, can we recover the information? Do we have it? And the previous council had quite a wide briefing, and Paul will be speaking to that at our risk and assurance committee to give you the new councillors a heads up. We did it very quickly at the induction, but something you want to dive into. Planning and district plan review. Be aware of this master plan dog pound. So we are, and Rick will kill me if he's here. We're certainly well on track. In fact, it's nearly completed. There's a bit of work to do, and fingers crossed we'll be looking at an opening end of February, early March. And it's really an exciting innovation to see the design that we've finally landed on. Roading, you'll be well aware of, and so yeah. Anything else that anybody want to touch on? The finances on page.
Yeah, I'll just take a step back, please, to roading.
Yeah.
I know you've got Hinakura there, and no doubt there's still work occurring between Stefan's team and the consultants and engineers. And we've got a workshop coming up specifically about the Hinakura question. But she'll put out the update prior to Christmas as to the state of the play and where things are at. There is some just quite amongst the community out that way wanting to know where things are at and perhaps getting a bit more of an update, because farmers are trying to weigh up and make decisions about how to they'll weekly it's stock issues going in, going out sort of thing. But now it's further looking and forecasting fertiliser and that sort of thing. So they've got business decisions to be making, and a bit more, perhaps a bit more information flowing through to them would help that.
Okay. I'll talk to Sheila about. Unfortunately, I don't think we actually have got much to physically say. But one of the things we did was just let people know that actually there's no further information at this stage, because we're still doing the investigation work. And council's got to really do a lot of thinking about how and what it wants to do and what the options are and so forth. So we have tried to let people know that there isn't any further information at this stage.
I'll come to Councillor Maynard, Councillor Oles, and Councillor Terry.
Yeah.
No, right.
Harry, one of the things that we've got is about the draft copy of the district plan.
Yep.
That you mentioned in here, and I just wanted to speak from being at the Māori Standing Committee meeting, the last Māori Standing Committee meeting, where we were taken through really.
Yeah.
A really, really good, I think you know what I'm gonna say anyway. But for those who weren't there, we had, Harmy come and present to us. And one of the things in the combined district plan, it states that I think the Masterton district has, around 20 significant sites. Carterton has around 8 or 9 and the South Wairarapa has none. Now, they had a presentation from that and our sites that are actually registered with the New Zealand Archaeological Sites, showing over 300 sites in the South Wairarapa alone. And so I think it's really important. And this is not, you know, this is factual. It's actually in a national database where we can pick that information up and take it. And I just wanted to bring that to the table because I think it's something really important. I think as the South Wairarapa district councillors and the council, just to say that our representatives on that, when they take back that draft, to say that we want our significant sites recognised for the South Wairarapa, and yeah.
No, thanks, Pip.
Continue the picture.
We'll just, councillor Olds, or councillor Macaulay, then councillor Flynn.
Yes, it's just on the timing of the rates, and I've had a horrible feeling, and of course this was explained to us, so forgive me, but in terms of the time between the update of the rates and policies and to set the rates, I think it's about 9 months. And just, could you explain to me how I explain to people that why that is such a long time?
So the we had this discussion at the workshop.
I know,
Yeah, okay.
from the answer.
So
I apologise.
there's 2 sets to it. There's taking the legal steps to go through it step by step.
Yep.
And so the Local Government Act requires a consideration under Section 101 of the Local Government Act, which is to look at each of council's significant activities and then make a decision on the proportion of benefit that occurs between those areas. And then there's the next step is to which we just covered off in the second workshop, which was looking at some of the detail and implications of where that percentage splits and whether the actual physical ability for us to recover or administer those rates is possible. And so there's that pragmatic lens of saying, okay, you may believe that the benefit falls 100% to this party, but the ability to collect the funding from that party is not practicable. Therefore, let's work out what is a fairer. And then so it's a step-by-step process, and that does take time. And then the next part is when council has its thoughts, is then to engage with the interest groups in the community in a combined way, and explaining to them, look, this is the problem council has. This is what we're thinking about. What are your views? So we want to do a lot of pre-consultation before a formal consultation process, and that process takes time. So that's the reasoning for council to do that, because we want to make sure that we maximise the engagement with people to hear their collective views, and hopefully for them to hear those views together, not just as a sector interest group. So
we'll come back to that in just a moment. I think councillor Plym is going to respond to councillor Maynard.
Yes, councillor.
Yeah, so on the sites of significance, rather than in the district plan, so what Jeppe and I are thinking of in terms of presenting the South Wairarapa idea is, rather than have it itemised in the district plan, have an overlay that says if you're doing something, because when you look at them, they're all quite close. So having an overlay that says if you're doing something in this shaded area on the coast, which is predominantly where they are, then it will trigger a consultation process. The list will obviously be held by council, So that when the farmer comes in and says, I want to do this on this particular place, it's in the shaded area, they go to council, goes, oh, no, you're fine, you can away go. So rather than actually identifying more to the public.
Cool, because something else that Harmony has done, he's actually overlaid it with polygons, so that way it is actually easier to see.
Yeah.
The areas there.
It's much easier.
Done some amazing work and yeah, so that's.
Once we do the maps,
But I
it's much
think-
easier to do overlays.
I guess it's just such a good time to get it in while there is the change happening to the combined district plan. It doesn't matter how it gets in, as long as it gets in and that it's acknowledged.
It's a means by which it gives certainty to the landowners out there that says this, it might say a strip of the coast is, there might be 200 bits in that strip somewhere. So that means then that the landowner has certainty that says, if I'm going to do something within this shaded area, I just need, before I get my digger out, I need to go to council and say, do I need to get a consent for this or do I need to engage? And the council will have the definitive list,
That's right.
and they'll go, no, you're fine, you're outside of the
And they'll
significant area. Makes it-
convey this to the property.
Trying to add certainty to the landowners.
I'm thinking if that's all right, councillor. Check through.
Chair, just in response, Harry gave a really good outline of the rating review process. I think the other thing is that rates are set in the finance and revenue policy as part of the LTP. And if you change that policy during an LTP period, you have to make an amendment to that LTP. So that creates significant work where you've got an LTP process about to start, which would be the logical point at which to do that work, which would bundle up things together in a nice, understandable way for the public as well, rather than consultation happening here, then you just do it again over here, and you just ask me about that, why you asked me. I get that.
That's.
So I'm sorry, I'm just going back to the conversation about sites of significance, because while Alistair talks about a contractor wanting to do work on around the, those things are a little more important than a farmer, for instance, wanting to put a fence line across it, whatever. And I think there's provision probably on our website to have those significant sites because they are historical and they're part of where we've come from. So I think it's important that we recognise those, as Harmy would have pointed out, and Foss would have pointed out when he identified them.
Christine was here.
Christine, yeah. So it's really important that we've got some record, even access on our website to those sites of significance. Combined district plan aside, I think it's important that we as South Wairarapa identify those, yeah.
I would endorse that.
Yeah, so the district plan is an operating.
That's right, it is.
That's right.
Yeah,
It has a-
And then it fades down, so
It's got to be a usable
it could
document.
be on there.
you're right. For old people like me who like to see our history and a record of our history that's entrenched in our region, then I think it's important.
people.
And can I also just point out as well, Christine also stated that of those 300, they're not all Māori. Because it's actually anything that predates 1900 back, so it includes settler, areas or homes and things and Greytown or.
European settlement as well. Yeah.
So it's actually, but there's over 300 of them. They're significant sites and when there's no way stating it. So we just want to get that in there because it's so important. Because that's how.
We've got sidetracked here.
We have a fella or two, but allow
Well, it was in here.
Yeah,
I felt it was the best place to actually bring that up.
Thank you.
Because it was mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the sites of significance have two potentially huge opportunities for us. The first is that, in fact, we demonstrate to Mana Whenua that we do care about the things that they care about too. And one of the things that has initiated this discussion, in fact, is some recent work on a site of significance. And unless it's in some way noted in a district plan, then we do not have the legal means to offer protection. So, but I think Councillor Old's point is also correct. We do ourselves a huge disservice if we don't make that information as easy to access and as widespreadly known as possible, because then it makes it easy for people to make decisions. I agree with that. But, in terms of the future of this part of the world, You know, we have the dark skies, we have a number of other things that attract tourists. Well, when you're a tourist in Ireland, you spend a lot of time going to archaeological sites. Well, here we've got our equivalent. Some of these sites go back a very, very long time. But they're a really interesting part of our history. And at the moment, I think they're a relatively unknown part to many people. And I think as they become better known, that segment society, maybe older people, those, you know, who do take an interest in our history, and as it becomes better known, we will become better known as an area where this sort of tourism and an opportunity to see things, you know, from 800 years ago, because there aren't that many places in New Zealand any longer that you can do that. So we've got a special opportunity, and yes, I thought that our standing committee did something really, really valuable. Did lots of things valuable, but I thought that was an absolute highlight. I did have a question about the rating review, because you mentioned that I think it was Philip's idea of having pre-consultation, and I'm pretty sure there was quite a lot of enthusiasm at that stage, pretty sure that, but it doesn't get a mention on the timetable we're looking at.
Okay. That's true. That's true. So yeah, okay.
So I think it would be valuable. This is my own view. I'll see what people say. If we could have a slight tweaking of this, and think about it from the point of view of our ratepayers who are interested.
This is 1st of July to the 1st of August. Carry out community consultation.
Yes,
but that's the formal stage.
That's the formal.
Okay, sorry, sorry.
Yep, no, I think
so if we think about it, I mean, one of the very strong things that the district plan review did was to have an early consultation, and I don't know the number of people have submitted, but I gather it's pretty substantial. And so here's our opportunity to do the same thing. So I think if somebody can have a look at positioning the story from the point of view of our ratepayers, who are starting to get, I think, interested in this, because did we not say in the long-term plan we'd do it 2 years ago?
no,
We did
2 years ago. No.
Okay, right, I think also it's worth picking up a point that Philip made. I'm not sure if it was at this one or the one before. You know, there are two ways you can do a rating review. One we'll just call quick and dirty. The other we can call comprehensive and thorough. I believe we're doing the latter.
We are.
And it takes time. Yes. And I think we emphasise that people should not be worried about the fact that we're going to try and rush through the easiest thing. We're going to rush through we're not going to rush through anything, but what it will come to is the most thought out rating review we've had in a while. Because I think, again, maybe not instant media release, but I think this would be valuable information to release to some of our readers.
But we will also be putting more wider explanation of what a rating review is and what it can achieve and what it can't on our website, so that there's the story about why those times that we were up to. Because it's sorry, the other contextual thing, I should have mentioned to answer Councillor Macaulay's question is also we're very conscious that we're going with an annual plan, which is about how much people are paying. We don't want to confuse that with how people are paying. And if you put those two things out of the wrong, people will conflate those two things together, and you lose the story. So part of the timing has been deliberate to actually make sure that you're not confusing the audience with two very different concepts.
Yeah.
So
That's very useful.
You had an observation, Councillor Macaulay?
An observation. No, I just appreciate that, because I have already had some questions from the community. I didn't feel I knew quite enough to answer it. So it was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll start bringing out more and more information as time goes on. Because this will become more and more.
Yes.
Something that we talk about. Councillor Adams.
And I was just like, and that discussion about publicising the timeline for the rating review. If we can combine that press release with releasing the BDO report at the same time. That might be beneficial as well.
Okay, just moving on.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the next, I don't know if it's lost in the detail, but probably one of the most significant of things to for the Wairarapa is the SkyChem aerial hydro surveying. So one of the things that people will ask you, does this map water? Okay? It doesn't map water. It maps the geology where water is likely to flow and be. Okay, because a lot of the questions we were getting at the opening were saying, well, we've had so much rain in our shallow aquifer that just distort the data. And the answer was no, because it's about the geology, which doesn't change. And so the purpose of this is to map the entire Wairarapa, including the coastal margins, the lake, and how it interacts the underground aquifers with a technology, just basically ground penetrating radar. It's not a New Zealand technology. It's this one particularly originated in Denmark, but it's been internationally recognised and used and produced survey data around the world, Australia, and I think 3 or 4 regions in New Zealand, and the most recent being the Hawke's Bay, and from here it's going to Gisborne. The main difference is it allows the survey data down to 300 metres, so it's deep. So it's not just your shallow aquifers, it's your deep aquifers. So you'll get an understanding between how all of the systems, the rivers, the groundwater all interacts, and where the geology will indicate that water will be and flow.
So Harry, just on that, it does take a couple of years for that data to be collated and reported back. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's right. Okay.
So first of all, we're entirely weather dependent. It's a helicopter, and it can only be in the air 2.5 hours at a time. And so the intention is between 6 to 6 weeks to complete all the surveying, and that's longitudinally up and down there's a map here, actually. It shows you 80 kilometres north. It travels at an average speed of about 100 kilometres an hour. So 6 weeks to have the surveying done. And if you think of what it actually does, it just produces a whole lot of binary numbers. So it just reports a whole lot of numbers. And so translating those numbers into a CAD model is incredible. I've seen the results from another region, and it's amazing the sense. It also does fractures, so you can actually see where your fault lines and your fracture points are in the area. So as a base piece of information to understand that the most valuable resource of this region relies on water. It is the most critical piece of information to do that in the next 2 years. In terms of our council's contribution, just to let you know, so originally the regional council applied to the PGF for 3/4 of the funding to do the where they thought the most critical area was. So about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, council agreed, all the council agreed to just top up the remaining amount to make sure the whole district was surveyed. We've already paid for that, so we paid for that 3 years ago. It was, every year it was just going to be this year, and then COVID hit, and it's going to be next year, and so forth. So there's no bill to council for doing that, but just know the council made a contribution, a very minor contribution to the costs. I think it would have been about 30,000, 40,000, whereas the PGF funding was 1.5 million to do this. And last but not least, there's a number of details here, but crisis and emergency management. So there's a lot going on. Obviously, we've had a number of crises we've had to respond to. Councillor Elms made the observation at the Infrastructure and Services Committee. This is the first time we've stood up our SIMS framework, crisis incident management response. Because we were worried that the road closures, particularly in the remote areas, may be longer than 24 hours. And so Paul stood up the team. We had some support from Remo, and that was complemented. So if you like, the separation is Tim's job is the lifelines, which is keeping the roads open. Right? The Sims role is how do we interact with our community in the wider context of the things that may occur when communities are isolated and our information flows and what's going on and that type of thing. And that stood up very successfully. So, you know, it's $1 million question. How well are we placed if we have a response? If you'd asked me that 3 years ago, I would have been terrified. I think we're getting better and better. We're going to be doing another practice simulation to really test how well we would respond in a situation. Equally, Remo, the regional organisation, are doing a capability assessment to make sure that the regional architecture is fit for purpose should there be a regional scale. So Auckland itself has given everyone a particular wake-up call. We've had our own wake-up call because of we've had to put it into place, but also that the regional architecture is currently looking at doing a review of its systems, processes, and so forth. So we'll be talking to them there. So look, that's the.
Hey, can I just make a comment with regards to that when sorry, how it come out? I'd just like to pass on to staff the fact that the appreciation that I heard from within the community for the information that they were being fed and the work that was done by the staff. So, you know, it was noted and it was appreciated. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. Thank you.
Right, any comments on the latter part of the CEO's report? Okay, well, I'll move that the CEO's report be received. Do I have a second? Or I do, Councillor Glover. Just before I put it to the vote, can I say that I think this is an excellent way to present the information, and I certainly get a lot of value out of it. So I think it's first class. So all those in favour of receiving the report, aye.
Aye.
No, thank you very much. And now we come to council action items. We're looking at page 198, 199. Okay. Does anybody have any questions, please? Councillor Clement.
Yeah, sorry, there's the action items. I'm just trying to find what that was.
Motivation again, shortly.
Sorry, just bear with me. Find it. Yeah, Amanda, this is your one. Greyhound Sport and Leisure. The report. Paper to council expected February 2022 about the long-term funding issues for sport and leisure.
I haven't gone back to them since the new year, and I've got a February meeting, so I can see where they're at. They were going to come back to us. Situation wasn't.
I can update that.
They're asking for additional information.
Pressing issue for them was that they had a timeline from the trust that's now been extended to July. So it means we'll be able to bring it through the process. Yeah, so I can update
On the trust, how are we getting along with the Greytown Rugby Club grounds and the cobblestones and the stuff and so on, the leases? Are they?
It's resting with the Greytown Community Board, I believe.
No, I'm sorry, Stephen, I'm just not up to date on the where that's exactly up to. We certainly know the trusts have now indicated this is where they're landing. So we're having discussions with them.
My understanding is that we should be almost finalising all the lease arrangements should be not far about coming here. It's got nothing to do with the community board.
I'll put that up with the information centre. Apologies.
Is that on the actions list somewhere?
No, it's not.
That was just a general.
So maybe it should be.
The last election, of course, for
Yeah.
trust, and then the vote they had 2 weeks after the election.
Yeah, I understand that.
Could I update you on action item 552? So this is the budgetary impact of removing Wellington Water. as a provider. So this was remaining open. The council decision was to retain Wellington Water as the provider of wastewater. This action was remaining open because of the uncertainty around the water races. So we've now been advised by the National Transition Unit that water races will remain with councils. So it won't be part of the transition, they won't be part of the resources transferred under the Three Waters regime. But equally more important is that the entity, if the water race is being used for the purposes of stormwater, then the entity will enter into a relationship agreement and fund the cost of a water race to receive stormwater. That's a really good.
It's a significant shift, yeah.
They will treat the water before it comes to us.
There's a whole different story about all that, but I mean, but the information is now, so this now, well, it's
The reason I asked that, obviously, with the new water regulator, they will be saying if you're putting stocked water there and we're contaminating it with runoff from roads and so on, then we'll be breaching our statutory requirements in terms of.
I think that's a conversation for another day, to be quite honest.
So that now, what it's suggesting is we close that item because the decision has now been made.
Closing that one then, does that not open a new one, which is to take the water races off Wellington Water now and start looking at the process for bringing it back in-house?
Well, there's
I
already,
suggest that be brought up at the next infrastructure.
there's a number of action items on infrastructure committee with regards to water races.
Yeah.
And we discussed that last week. So we need to work with Colin and Stefan and members of the infrastructure committee to deal with that whole topic.
Totally agree.
And if I can just make a reference to item 420 on page 199. This has been requested September 21, 6 months later, somebody has sought clarification on what is required. 2 months after, somebody's still seeking clarification. Can I suggest that as the
May I respond to that? Because, so the question was, it was brought up due to the fact that logging was happening really soon and we needed to know what the state was for heavy vehicle use around the rural roads. Then a few months later, it came back saying, why is this information being sought? And we said, because we know it's coming up and we need to know what the state is of the roads. Then they came back a couple of months later and asked the same question again. And we said, we really need this information. Like, this is the type of information that we actually do need to ensure that our rural network is being looked after when these heavy logging trucks start hammering them.
absolutely.
So that's what that was what we were asking for. We were quite specific, and that was why it was never closed. But I'm not sure how it's ended up in the rating review instead of the report being to tell us about how the roads
Rating review would be the appropriate vehicle.
to find out for the roads.
Yeah.
Roading network. Is the rating review going to be in time for when the heavy trucks start being used now? Because
They have already started.
exactly, because that's why it was raised in 2021.
Well, we are now doing the rating review.
There is no capacity to actually do anything, even if they were damaging roads at the moment. And we can't do that until we do the rating review and we wait.
And when we
until
do the long-term plan.
the decision is actually.
So
Correct. Ira was leading the charge.
can I, just direct it to you, Mr. Chief Executive, that this has been on the go for a very long time and that we bring it to a final report. Well, what would be a reasonable deadline, do you think? I mean, it's got to be done in the context of the rating review. The rating review is ongoing. What do you think? I think look at the rating.
I think we're still stuck with the court of review, with the court of appeal decision. So that's what's holding it up, actually. So it's out.
What Councillor Plum is referring to is the wire road.
Yeah.
Where they had a specific problem to do with forestry.
Yeah.
Not paying proportionally a wide range. It wasn't specifically just to do with the the roads itself. So it's caught up in a wider context, which again is why I stress the importance of making sure that the process is followed, because that's where, for instance, the logging companies, sorry, the Forest Owners Association are the ones that are pursuing the appeal because of they see it as a detriment to their business and the cost of their business. So that's why we want to make sure you tick your boxes and all those types of things, because the decisions are open to judicial review and appeal. But so the question was, when is the point?
I think we would need it by April.
Yeah, you would. Yeah.
Is that possible, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other action items that people wish to discuss?
Could I just ask Kerry a question, Mr. Smith? To do with the logging trucks on the road, is there any somehow way of getting funding for roads where from NZTA where there's heavy use by lots of logging trucks on the under the something like it's detrimental to our local economy, but it's very exponential for the country's economy?
So the NZTA don't fund by the use of the road. They fund for the category of the road. So you're funded for an unsealed road. This is a common issue right across New Zealand. In fact, those areas that have unsealed roads that have tankers going up and down daily face a much bigger problem than we do for logging. So logging occurs on a rotation basis. If council were to contemplate a revenue source, it would be to the land owner, the plantation owner, that you can't tax or provide a rating mechanism for logging companies specifically. So it has to be the land owner that would make that contribution.
I guess my major concern with regards to this is the fact that there are vulnerable people that live out in the rural areas where this logging is going to be being done. We've got ratepayers out there who are older, older members of whānau who can't get into town if anything happens to those roads. Now, they manage to cope whenever the roads get cut off from storms or, but when it's this and then, we know that this is coming. It's good to be able to show them that we're doing the work, that we're doing the mahi, trying to make sure that they're as safe as possible. Yeah. And that goes the other way as well. Emergency vehicles can't get there either. So, as long as we have that as well, and that was another reason why it was being asked for.
Yeah. But the mechanism to resolve it was through the rating review. That's why the recommendation was to take that.
Well, that's how
it into the rating review.
The joys of living in the country where we have highly productive forestry blocks and primary producing areas. And
25 years later, they're highly productive, but they went 25 years ago when people moved.
But a little destructive sometimes on our roads as well. We're not
absolutely
fine, but the sort of traffic that's coming their way. Okay, I think that probably wraps that up. Thank you very much. We will now come to the report from the mayor, it basically consists of three appointments. The first one is that we need a representative on the Ruamahanga Valley Management Advisory Committee. I'm recommending that I be. It happened that Councillor Olds, who was on the Featherston Community Board, sought to withdraw, and Councillor Sadler graciously agreed to step in. And I saw that, Councillor, and the Wairarapa Safer Community Trust requested that I join the committee. So if we just take those recommendations so far, any comments, please?
Yeah, could I just on your one with the Ruamahanga, I'm just wondering whether you would be the best person to do it and whether it actually has to be a councillor or we could appoint someone from the community into it, given the work that's gone on in Greytown with the flood and the vast knowledge that some of those people on that committee have. They may be actually better representatives for us than you, who don't have the background in the flood management. Maybe I'm just
one would have a view on that. Observe that on the Wahine Action Group, we did have the mayor at the time.
So having served on the Lower Valley scheme for two terms, I think I was on there, yeah. It meets twice a year. It's quite complex. It sets the rates for those users on that scheme. And of course, I'm on that scheme as well with, I pay rates on that and so do you. So it's important that we understand what works they plan to do for that financial year, what they've undertaken. Climate change is playing a huge part in representation on that committee. And my thinking is, Your Worship, you're tied down with other things. Would that not be something that perhaps our climate change advisor committee chair could look at seriously, because it has a huge impact on the environment on that Lower Valley.
I quite agree, and it ties in with quite a lot of other activities that
It does. Yep.
that also need to be contemplated, particularly to do with the Wairarapa Moana.
Yep.
Trust,
Absolutely.
settlement, etc.
Yep.
So I do see these things as all
Interlinking.
a sort of an interlinked whole. And I do think particularly the issue over, as you say, its impact on climate change. So certainly if Councillor Gray wishes to set my nomination.
As I say, they only meet twice a year.
I understand.
Yeah, so it's not a biggie. I mean, it's probably a full day and it's quite intense on the days, but it's really important we get representation there. It absolutely is critical. Yeah.
Can I think on that? I hear what you're saying, and I love to put my hand up and get involved in everything. So I'm a bit of a busybody, but I'm like getting to the point of being quite overextended with the amount of commitments that I've made through the council.
Taking on the climate from me, if I can further that, and me now being deputy on that, I would be willing to. I would be willing to step in and do this.
Right. Okay, so we'll change 1A to Councillor Maynard, if that's got
Yeah,
people nod from people.
I know.
Thank you.
But if they could meet on a Wednesday or Thursday, that'd be fantastic.
You won't tell them when they can leave. They'll tell you when they meet.
Yeah.
For the three nominees,
They have to.
now become Councillor Maynard, Deputy Mayor Sandra Potter, the Mayor to the Wairarapa Safer Community Council.
Sorry, Your Worship, just going back, it would pay to have somebody, for instance, on as a deputy, as a representative on that committee, because we don't want not to have anybody there. So if a meeting didn't suit Pip, then we'd need somebody.
I would go.
Somebody to
I'd
fill
be
it
able
there.
to do it as long as I have enough lead time. I can get, move things around with my
We
work.
just need a safety net, that's all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like a second.
Yeah.
Person to be able
So
to,
Rebecca might.
an alternate,
to interview.
an alternate,
Pip can't.
yeah, so between the two of us.
Sorry.
I asked, sorry, we'll finish with those
You
nominations.
would be
Yeah, I know.
alternate.
Right, so I have moved the three nominations. Do I have a seconder, please? No, yes, I do. Councillor Holmes. All in favour, please say aye.
Right.
Thank you very much. Now,
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Does that include Colin stepping down in the Legacy Community Board?
I think,
yes, it does.
well, hang on, we just need to hold fire on that one this month, because otherwise we're going to struggle to get a quorum. So I'll have to remain in that position until.
We just changed the date.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, so deputy
Community Board.
to the Peterson Community
Have
Board
a quorum.
from which day?
From. You'll have to,
Next meeting.
at the conclusion of the next meeting.
Yeah.
And you'll have to adjust my pay packet accordingly.
Okay, I will do that too. Now, I don't know if you caught that. It's recommendation 1B. Deputy Mayor Melissa Sadler for the Featherston Community Board after the next community board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We better just double check. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, I just wanted to just get a bit more clarity on your schedule and what you've been up to. And the previous mayor used to put all the meetings that they've a sort of summary of all the meetings that he goes to, so we get an idea of what's been talked in the community on our behalf. And it would be quite useful to sort of know if you're you're meeting with the police or you're meeting with us and what's been discussed, so we get an idea. So all talking of the same sheet of music, as it were. So having your diary.
I think I can easily do that now. That's right, that's right. Okay,
That way we
so,
can see if you get earning.
sorry, what's that?
That way we can see if you're earning the money.
Oh, fair enough too.
What about us?
Oh, well, we're not.
Now, there is a second recommendation, which just repeats something that we did discuss before, which is that I do think it's important that we note that any report that comes to a council meeting or a committee meeting, which involves financial considerations, must have the signed comments from the chief financial officer. And just to make it formal, that's why I move what we do move. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, Councillor Sadler. And do I have any comments or observations? We'll put it to the vote. All in favour, please say
Aye.
Aye.
And now we come to a report from Councillor Pillay.
Have you had your first meeting for the year? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what this.
Oh, 8th of December, yeah.
So there's nothing really there. These are all the minutes of the things to road safety. Two members of staff do an extraordinary amount of work between them, as you can see from the minutes. And so we're represented by all three councils and various road user forums and so on. And this is what they get up to. And they do it on a shoestring. And as a council, we provide money. I'm not quite sure how much is it a year, Harry?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that off the top of my head.
It's not a huge amount, but yeah. So they operate on that.
There's project funding that comes through Waka Kotahi for Wairarapa Road Safety Council, as well as the contribution from the three councils,
And the Road Safety Trust.
and the Road Safety Trust,
But what we should be,
Yeah.
I'm sure that we're going to lose our bit of it at the end of the year. I think it's since last year. I think
Who's what? Is Bruce retiring?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
I remember he retired from his previous role.
You're right, the big stop, yeah.
Are there any sort of aspects of the report that you think we should particular interest in?
Be around 2:00 actually.
A lot of it's the community involvement with the schools and the SAD and driving training for youth and that sort of thing. Right. So it's sort of very much a community focused thing. They do a lot with the motorcycle clubs around the place, which is really great. He runs a safe driving course twice a year. It's well oversubscribed.
Right.
So just they do a huge amount. So they're always down all our local schools.
Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Thanks, Al, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Right on the front page there, these total road deaths in the Wairarapa 2020 to 2022. Are there any stats for the injury crashes in the Wairarapa that same period of time?
Any
statistics for the road injury crashes?
Yes, there are. We can get them. They're all public. But those, what he hasn't done is those are deaths on the road. But as you're aware, one of the deaths, for example, the road in Carterton last year wasn't, whilst it's a road death, it was almost more death by use of a car as opposed to an accident. And there was all sorts of issues there. So those statistics are not so much what Waka Kotahi uses, because if you look at Waka Kotahi's statistics, they're significantly less than those in terms of deaths on the road caused by road misuse or speed or whatever. He's just put all deaths on the road, regardless of whether it's whether it's a suicide or it's a traffic accident or whatever. It's all lumped together.
Thanks.
Right. Yes, thank you.
Alistair, so when it says our districts, do we stop at the top of the Rimatakas to Mount Bruce?
Yeah, Rimatakas. Yeah, so from for our district goes from the top of Rimatakas to Mount Bruce. as opposed to when we were kids, it went from the top of the Rutuckers to Woodville.
Right, all in favour of receiving councillor Plymouth's report, please say aye. Aye, against. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Now you have to leave us around 2:00.
Yeah, I'm just a little late, that's all, but that's okay.
Time.
Thanks.
We're now going to go into a public excluded part of the meeting. And there are two reasons for doing that. One is because we have to come and confirm some minutes from a previous public excluded meeting where we had a matter to discuss regarding planning purposes. And so we just need to come and confirm those minutes. And we're also going to hear a progress report from the CEO's Employment Review Committee, and good reason to exclude the public. Conservation of Meat Act, 1987. I should just also include here that in reference to approving the minutes from the December meeting, good reason to withhold information public consists under the same act in reference to section 2H, section I, section 7(2)J. Now,
I'll move that we move into public excluded.
yes, okay, I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Plummer.
So,
Or
can-
please say aye.
Aye.
Please.
We have a
so you just start the clock.
couple of minutes comfort break.